It looks like we've got quorum, so we will get started with our February 21st, 2024 Taxicab Advisory Committee meeting. Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Shanilo Rivera,
Present.
Abel Seifu, Agustin Hodoyan. Also, just a reminder, please unmute your mics when you're speaking. Alfred Banks, Akbar Majid, Antonio Hueso,
Here.
David Taysom, George Abraham,
Here.
Karen Igareda, Daryl Mayakawa, Michael Anderson,
Here.
Margot Tangway. Here. Michael Trimble, Letty Canizales, Peter Zishi, Zidu Girma, Austin Shepard,
Present.
Jessica Marty. Okay, we have a quorum.
All right. Let's move to agenda item 2, approval of minutes. Is there any public comment on the approval of minutes?
No public comment.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes for the November 15th, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Got a motion from Mr. Majid,
Second.
second from Mr. Hueso. Any requests to speak to this item? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Shanilo Rivera.
Yes.
Ab-
Actually, we'll just do it by voice.
I was
All
gonna say,
all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then let's move to non-agenda public comment, please.
no public comment.
No non-agenda?
Oh, sorry, there is one. Oh, there's 7.
Please proceed.
In the interest of time, we're gonna go ahead and do 90-second public comments. So. Vakar Hussein. You can proceed to the podium.
On. Okay. Good afternoon, Council Member Elo Riveras and all members and all my friends, co-workers, and Mr. Hamidi. Unfortunately, today from Fox News, Salvador Rivera cannot present here. I talked to him, he said, sorry, he's on a other story today, but he's supposed to be here. I'm here. My name is Vakar Hussein. I'm a cab driver since 1994, working in San Diego. And unfortunately, right now, everything has been changed in Otay and San Isidro. A lot of illegal transportation of people working there without business license, sheriff license, even not they have IDs. And the people from Mexico played. They are taking our customers. And when we talk to them, they harass us, they threaten us, even a couple times they have fights. That's the reason we are here, to find a positive solution for this problem. I really appreciate everybody's
seconds left.
time that they give us, and I'm expecting there will be a positive solution for this problem forever. Please show up over there, then these illegal transporters run away. And then they come back and they are very aggressive. They threat us, they harass us, that we are reporting to the police. And this problem going on and going on years and years.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate your time. You have a wonderful day.
All right, our second public comment is from Cameron Hamidi.
Hi, Council Member Elo Rivera and committee members. This is an ongoing issue about raiteros or illegal taxi operations. They've taken over the stands at Otay and San Isidro. And we'd like to ask Council Member Elo Rivera to reach out to the district attorney and also to the police captain of the Southern Division. I think MTS is already starting to do that, but we really need your office to reach out and back it because there's a lot of crime that happens there. There's fights. They've even gotten so brazen as to put a tent up on the sidewalk with an open sign. So there's oftentimes more, Toyota Corollas that are unregistered with like a lift sticker, it's not a lift, and they're just picking up passengers. And it's a horrible way to enter our country, right at the border, illegal operations. So we need you to please use your office, and there's many things we can do together. If we can make a standing subcommittee on taxi stands, that would be helpful as well. Because, for example, I was on this committee in 2011, my father in 1990,
30 seconds.
90s. We used to take taxi stands very seriously. Now, because of Uber and Lyft, there's a lot of dilapidated taxi stands. So if we can have a standing committee, a subcommittee, and review all the taxi stands in the city and see what to do about moving some locations, venues have changed in the past 30 years, and also have enforcement. And we like to thank MTS. The office has done a great job, but they don't have guns, and they're dangerous people there. So we need the district attorney and the city,
Thank you.
the police captain to be involved. Thank you.
Laura Herrera.
Buenas tardes. En español, ok. Yo soy taxista desde 2008. Desde que yo entré a trabajar, están los raiteros, pero cada vez es el problema más grande. Ya no nos podemos estacionar en nuestro lugar de trabajo. Nos amenazan, se pelean con nosotros. Es gente que no trae licencia, placas mexicanas, muchos pleitos, muchos problemas. Y la verdad, nuestro negocio se ha ido bajando mucho y nosotros de ahí nos mantenemos nuestras familias, y pienso que el MTS y policía tiene que ir y dar tickets porque nomás los mueve. Ellos no se va al MTS y regresa. ¿Ok? Sí. Ok.
So I'm going to help her out and translate, okay? So we're going to restart.
Ok.
¿Quiere
Ok,
empezar
sí.
usted?
Soy taxista desde 2008.
She's been a taxi driver since 2008.
Desde que entré a trabajar, es el problema de los raiteros.
That since she started, there's been an issue with raiteros or illegal operators.
Hay muchos problemas. La gente pelea mucho con nosotros,
There's a lot of problems. They fight with us.
nos amenazan,
They threaten us.
nos quitan de nuestros estenes.
They take them out of the taxi stands.
Hay personas que no traen licencia,
There are people with no
no
licenses.
traen carros mexicanos.
They have cars, Mexican registered cars.
Yo pienso que son personas que no tienen ni aseguranza.
She believes that they don't have
Ujú.
insurance.
Y cada día son más y más. Ahí tenemos muchas fotos de toda la gente que es. A mí me han amenazado, se han peleado conmigo.
That every day there's more and more of them.
Mhm.
I have photos of the people who have threatened me and run me out.
Ajá. Y
Me
nosotros,
faltan 30 segundos.
ok, y nosotros lo que queremos es esa ayuda, que nos mande el MTS y que den tickets y la policía también.
That
Es
they would
todo.
request help, that they ask MTS and the police to send people who can write tickets, and that's what the help that they would like to request.
Ok, gracias.
Thank you. Okey dokey, next one, Carlos Garcia.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carlos Garcia. I'm a cab driver since 2012. And we had the same, is the problem, the raiteros. What happened in my person, myself, I had to call a police against a people, and I put a restriction order to some of them. Why? Because they start fighting with me. And sometimes they just talking loud or try to do something to scare you. But sometimes these problems go behind that. They go, we go to fight, and we need help. I just think on this, in this thing, it's very important to pay attention on all that problem with the raiteros. Give a ticket to them and to the people taking, I don't know, it's to the people taking the rates or not, but to the raiteros for sure. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have Marco Quiroz.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marco Quiroz. I've been driving a cab for, I would say, about 30 years, since I was a little kid. And that's the same problem that I'm gonna issue, we already got help from MTS, they're going to do good job, but I get, like my friend said, they don't have guns, they don't, these people, they're not scared from them, even if they give them ticket, we need to get the police, San Diego police, involved. And sometimes we call and they come, but they just chase them away, I believe that they need to start, checking their registration, insurance, because they're illegally parked. They don't park on red zone. And another point I want to issue, that we want to get help from the city to post a sign there that says like no loitering and no soliciting, because, with that tools, the police can get involved and actually give a ticket to the guy,
30 seconds
for
left.
being soliciting there. And because they already legally park on red zone, but like I said, the police just chase them away, but they need to start giving them tickets, and start checking their papers, that they're have insurance and current registration. And I hope we can get help from them, because like other friends said, it's been driving 30 years, and those guys that were already there, but when
Thank
the past few months, it's been getting very worse. So thank you for your help.
Christian Montes.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've been a taxi driver for about a year, a few months, and this is an ongoing issue. The OTI pics, I'm sorry, OTI dot pics, you can see pictures there of all the raiteros where they're parked. There's a lot of harassing, threatening going on, and it's an ongoing issue, and I think it's getting greater and greater since I've been there a year. I've been seeing how many different raiteros come every day, and how they threaten my coworkers. For me, it's frightening. Since I've been there like a year, I don't know what goes on. The threats, they keep going on. They're not afraid of the police. They scream that out, yell that out. They're not afraid. So it's an ongoing issue, and I see that, like my coworker said, the police goes by. Sometimes they just move them. Sometimes they give them tickets. But as we have our hands tied, to be honest with you, because the officer says, don't confront them, don't even get close to them. So even when we're on our stand, customer comes and
30
asks
seconds.
for the ride, for the trip, and the raiteros are right there. They're calling them to go with them. So if you guys could give us a help and, keep us, this is what gives us food to our families. This is our job. We love it. We like it. These guys been going for years. I'm just starting. So, and I like it. And then thank you guys for the service, for all the permits, and thank you for your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Jairo Camacho.
Sí, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Jairo Camacho. Es el mismo problema que traen mis compañeros, lo traemos pues, todos los choferes, no nomás de Otay, CBX y la frontera de San Isidro.
He's bringing the same problems to this committee, and that it's not just down at Otay, that it's at San Isidro, at CBX.
Porque el problema, pues yo ahí tengo 10 años y ese problema ya estaba. Y es increíble que la ciudad de San Diego y todas gobierno en general no pueden hacer nada con ellos. Es increíble, realmente.
That he started driving down there 10 years ago, and that problem was already there, that it's incredible that the city and the other entities that govern haven't been able to do anything about it.
Es gente que no anda bien, es gente que anda sin licencias, sin aseguranzas, carros mexicanos, como ya les han dicho, es gente agresiva, es gente que se droga, realmente se droga,
That
toman.
it's people who, like was mentioned by his colleagues, don't have insurance, don't have licenses, are driving Mexican registered cars. Some of them are even doing drugs or drinking.
Entonces, y sí, llega una autoridad, pues se van todos, ya 5 minutos y se va la policía y ellos vuelven. Y la policía ya no vuelve a regresar. Ahí no está, pues es el área más insegura que hay.
That the police come by and that for 5 minutes they all leave and then after a while they all come back.
Ojalá y nos pudieran decir si aquí alguien nos puede decir con quién ir, porque ya no sabemos qué hacer, la verdad. Gracias.
That he hopes that this committee can tell him where they can go to solve this issue. Thank you. That concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. I do want to just let folks know that my staff is already communicating with MTS staff on this, and we'll be communicating with law enforcement, other stakeholders, and the District 8 Council Office as well. We want to make sure that they're included to figure out the best way to address the situation. But thank you, everyone, for the comments and for bringing the issue further to our further attention. With that, we will now move from non-agenda public comment to item number 4.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. Agenda item number 4 will cover the 2024 maximum rates of fare. This is a rate of fare comparison as a background in per MTS policy 34. MTS utilizes the change in the consumer price index to calculate maximum rates of fare every year. The change is published mid-January, and based on that change, there was a slight decrease in the consumer price index that resulted in a very slight change to the maximum rates of fare. As everybody can see, the flag drop remained the same. However, there was a minimum reduction for the per mile rates and the per hour waiting time. So this is important because this is the first time in the last 4 years that the consumer price index change has resulted in a lower maximum rate of fare. Inflation have been going up, and therefore so did the maximum rates of fare. So this means that every permit holder that did not have their maximum rates already, the 2023 program into the taximeters, I should say that had already the maximum rate of fare for the taximeters, will have to recalibrate those meters to reflect the change for 2024. So adjusting all taximeters to the maximum rates of fare or any rate lower than the maximum rates is mandatory. We always get this question at the beginning of the year. Adoption of the maximum rates is mandatory or anything lower. So in this case, as I mentioned, because there is a decrease in the maximum rates of fare, those have to be adopted and recalibrated to reflect them. Any permit holder may charge less at any time, and there are certain dispatch services and permit holders that choose to charge less than the maximum rates of fare. Because this is a different circumstance for the last years where the maximum rates have decreased, for hire vehicle administration will allow a 60-day grace period or 60-day adjustment period. That way every permit holder can contact the authorized service agents and recalibrate their meters to the 2024 rates of fare. If they already have a fare that's lower than the 2024 maximum rates, then there's no need, because it's lower than there's no need to recalibrate those fares. But if they are higher than the 2024 rates of fare, then they must recalibrate those meters, and they will have 60 days to do so by making a schedule or an appointment with an authorized service agent. And there will be more information provided here by our TAC members from Weights and Measures here in the next agenda item. After that 60 days, after those 60 days, as of today, inspectors will then conduct inspections in the field for the taximeters. We do them regularly. We do them at the airport. We do them at OTA and San Isidro, CVX, downtown San Diego, and anywhere where taxi cabs are known to congregate. They're random inspections. We check for meters. We check for safety items. We will be checking the meter rates, the flag drop, and what's programmed into the meters. In in the event that a permit holder fails to adjust their taximeters after the 60-day period, we will be taking that vehicle out of service, and we will be charging a $50 vehicle reinspection fee per our administrative fees in order to place that vehicle back in service. Also, per our policy number 34, every taxi cab that is equipped with a point of sale device is able to charge 6% more of the maximum rates of fare. For those vehicles that do have those point of sale devices and wish to charge 6% more than the maximum rate of fare, all that it's required is to schedule an appointment with our inspectors. That way we can verify that the point of sale device meets our criteria. And there will be no charge for verifying that equipment. And finally, changes to the taximeter rates must be performed by an authorized serviced agent. And that concludes agenda number 4 on the maximum rates of fare.
Thank you so much. Do we have public comment on this item?
We do not.
All right. Do we have any committee member comments on this item? All right, we'll start with Marco.
I sat and read this till 1:30 in the morning, and so I'm going to have some interesting comments. This one, we need a definition of hard meter, soft meter, and electronically booked as part of the agenda item and as part of the regulations so that we all understand. The permit holders know what it is, but when other people reading it, or if you have people, newcomers coming in, they need to know what we're talking about. So a simple sentence or two of what is a hard meter, what is a soft meter, what is electronically. That is part of our curriculum here.
Yes, Margot, we do have a definition of a soft meter and a hard meter currently at Ordinance 11. And at the following agenda item number 6, I will address some additions that cover your concerns in terms
Okay.
of.
I had it here because I wanted to make sure that everyone here understood the same vernaculum.
Correct, yes. And as I said, there is already a definition currently at Ordinance 11 that describes the type of equipment.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Banks?
The meter rate, you have a choice not to change it or leave it like that. Either leave it like the 2023 or change it to the new rate. You can leave it the way it is or change it, right? You have a choice, right?
If it's lower, if the rates are the same or lower than the 24 maximum rates of fare, then there's no need to change. That is the rule. The ordinance allows a permit holder to charge less, or no more, I should say, than the current maximum rates of fare, in this case, the 2024 rates of fare. But that depends. That depends on what the permit holder, such as yourself, might have your taximeters programmed to. If the rates programmed to your meter are the 2023 rates of fare, the top portion of this slide, then you do have to adjust them. Because then there would be higher than the current maximum rates of fare. There was a decrease. So it's a matter of checking what fares you charge and making sure that they're no more than the new 2024 maximum. To use that as an example, I understand that Yellow Cab charges less even that the new maximum rates of fare. In their case, then there's no change unless they want to. But they wouldn't need to change them because they're already charging less than the 2024 maximum rates of fare.
Thank you.
Okay?
Any additional questions or comments on this item? All right. Lenny, thank you for the update. Don't see any other requests to make comments or ask questions, so we will go ahead and move on to item 5, please.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda number 5 will provide a presentation from a representative from the County of San Diego Agriculture Weights and Measures update. It would be Mr. Austin Shepherd.
That's right.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for giving me some time. This is a very short presentation, so I'd appreciate if you held your questions till the end. If you just can't wait, though, raise your hand. We can stop. So the Department of Weights and Measures, we conduct annual inspections of all taximeters on an annual basis. So each year, we look at every taximeter. When we're doing our inspection, some of the things that we're looking for is making sure that all required fare information is posted or available. And our specifications in this are a little vaguer than MTS's. So a lot of times just what we're doing is we're checking the MTS postings, but we do have a couple additional requirements. For example, the meter display must be visible to a customer, at least a customer sitting in any normal customer space. We also check to make sure that the time testing computation is correct, so that we check the timer so that the timer is correctly calibrated. The distance measuring, this is the meat and potatoes. We run the taxicabs on the measured mile course and make sure that a mile is actually a mile. We have to check to make sure that any extras are both accurate and are displayed in a place where the customer can see them. And we check to make sure that the lead and wire security seal from the service agent is correct, so that there's been no tampering with the device since it's last been placed into service. And as I said before, all of our inspections we perform on a certified 1 mile measured course. Next slide. So for our fees, you want to know when your registration expires. So we send out applications 2 months before the due date. So that's the notice what we give cabs. And then if you have any changes in your contact information, we'd appreciate it if you could reach out to us so that we know that we are sending our invoices to the correct location and they're not getting lost in the mail, to make sure that you get the notice that you need. Currently, our registration fees are $148.20 annually. This is a change from last year. This is set by state law, and the state law just got amended effective January 1st. So any registrations due after January 1st, 2024 are now at this new price. It went up a little more than $20. So our vehicle fee is $120. The taximeter device fee is $26. And then there's also an admin of $2.20 that actually goes to the state. We collect it on behalf of the state. And so that all adds up to the $148.20. If you pay late, more than 30 days after the due date of the registration, then there will be a 50% delinquent fee as well. So you have a 30-day grace period. And then we do not mail out or give out paper permits of any sort. We haven't done that in a long time. We just put the sticker on the device. That sticker is the official seal, and it lets customers, MTS, and the sheriffs know that that meter has been inspected, tested, and certified by Weights and Measures. Finally, one important note, it's important to remember that your registration renewal date is not necessarily when your cab is being inspected. So just because you've paid your registration fee doesn't mean that your cab's immediately going to be inspected. It'll just be inspected at some point in that year. And just because your cab has been inspected doesn't mean that you're up to date on your renewal fee. Your renewal fee might be several months later or several months before. The renewal date is simply the first of the month that your vehicle, the first day of the month that your vehicle was initially registered with us. So your renewal date will be the same month every year. It doesn't change. Next slide. So for scheduling taximeter inspections, typically an inspector will reach out to you to schedule your taximeter inspection, which is another reason why it's important to keep your contact information up to date with us. If anything changes, please let us know. If you think that you are due for an inspection and you haven't been inspected, you can feel free to call us. We have a special phone number for that. That's 858-694-2778. Also listed on the slide that you can review at your leisure. So we only perform taxi inspections 1 week out of each month. We don't do taximeters 3 weeks out of every month. So it's important that if you have an inspection, it's going to happen in that window, or it's going to be pushed back a whole month. We only do taximeter inspections by appointment. We just don't have the staff to really accommodate walk-ins. So if you do not have an appointment, don't expect to be able to just show up and have an inspection. We would love to be able to accommodate you, but that's simply not going to be possible. We wouldn't be able to get to do everyone who shows up if we did it that way. So please make sure that you have an appointment before you arrive. If you cannot make an appointment that you have with us, please try to give us a 24 hours of cancellation. We do have a $20 missed appointment fee. We will not issue that fee if you give us notice though. And then if you have multiple non-responses, we will notify MTS. This is not something that we do lightly, but if your cab is not getting inspected, then we will notify MTS and the sheriffs as well. So one final thing before we move on. If you want to make sure to do everything you can possible so that your meter passes inspection, the two most important things you can do is visit a licensed service agent to have your taximeter calibrated sometime prior to our inspection. Just because it was accurate a year ago doesn't necessarily mean that it's still accurate. There's all sorts of things that can sort of drift with time. So it's really important to get your taximeter calibrated. And then you can also visit our measured mile course yourself on your own time and just drive and make sure that your taxi cab is hitting that 1 mile mark at the line that is drawn. If you want to know where that is, you can give us a call at the number that I mentioned earlier, or you or your driver's probably done the course before. Okay. So one thing you might notice that we have not talked about so far is the difference between hard meters and soft meters. So in the weights and measures world, we see two types of soft meters. There are soft meters that plug in directly to the onboard diagnostic port, just like a regular cab meter would. Those meters essentially perform exactly as a regular taxi cab meter, and there's no difference at all in how we approach them to a regular cab meter. However, there's also another type of soft taxi meters that do not connect to the onboard diagnostic port. They do not use wheel rotation in order to measure distance, and instead they use GPS. Those, in terms of our regulatory requirements, are very much the same right now as regular taxi meters. They still need to be registered with us, and they still need to be tested annually. We are building a new measured mile course to test those meters. We've found that some of the software that's been developed does not have the capacity to turn off the timer function, which means we can't do our old measured mile course because there's a couple stop lights on it. And so if the cab stops and then the timer runs, it changes the price, and we no longer have that accurate measurement of when the 1 mile mark drops. So if you have a soft meter cab right now, you gotta give us a little patience. We should have that course up and running pretty quickly, and then we'll be reaching out to your company to get those meters inspected. And that's the presentation. I'd be happy to entertain any questions now.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Do we have public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. If you public comment, if you'd like to make public comment.
Because,
So just really quick, just during the public comment period,
yes,
hold on, we're really
okay,
quick.
yes,
For you to provide your public comment, you can ask questions, but it's not a back and forth.
okay.
So if you raise questions, the board can hear that.
I got a doubt, so I'm gonna say it. I'm a permit holder. My meter is gonna be recalibrated. But I went to meter inspection and paid the fee that went up already. And about 2 months ago, back in December. So my doubt is if I have to, when recalibrate, if I need to go make an appointment to go to meter inspection again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
No, that concludes public comment.
All right, if there's no additional public comment, and we'd like to respond to the question or answer that question, Mr. Shepherd?
So my understanding of the question is, if you get your meter recalibrated by a service agent, do you need to come back in for an inspection again? You do not need to pay the registration fee again. The registration is good for a year, but we would like to know that it has been placed into service. The service agent should be notifying us, and we would be scheduling an inspection with you sooner than we would have otherwise to account for that.
All right. Do we have any additional, Mr. Majid and then Mr. Wesa?
Yes, I did have a question. Weights and measures, they inspect from gas stations to grocery stores to you name it, everything that's out there. So the question that I have is if TNCs use a GPS-based meter and they can bypass your entire regulations and not pay any fees, why is it that the taxi cabs, if they're using the same technology, why do they have to go through this process whereby they have to pay you fees and go through the inspections and so on and so forth?
I understand that there's a lot of frustration and a lot of concerns with how the differences in regulations between taxi cabs and TNMS developed. At this point, the state law for transport network systems is different than cabs, and that's why there's the differences in regulations. If that's something that you want to change, you need to talk to our state lawmakers because they're the ones who set the state law.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Majid. Mr. Wesa?
Yes, my question is, in the past, before COVID hit us, there used to be the ability to, if you had multiple cabs, to arrange an appointment at your site to get the vehicles inspected. Is that still something that's doable or that's no longer available? You said because you have less staff.
At this point, we only have the one measured mile course. We used to have several throughout the county. In 2023, we did examine the possibility of reopening another measured mile course, and we did not see that there were enough cabs to justify our time doing that. It would have cost more money than it would have saved. However, if we get a lot of requests for cabs in an area, then we will look into that again. So if you have an area that you would like a measured mile course in, I would recommend reaching out to us, but also talking to other cab owners in your region and having them reach out to us too. And we can reevaluate that again.
Well, normally, since I represent a call center, we reach out to some of the individuals that are permit holders, individual permit holders. And in the past, we used to allow them to come into the line because we would check with you guys and you guys would allow it. And we're next to a measured mile course that's certified by you guys on Market Street.
Right, yeah. At this point, we're not reopening the Market Street measured mile course, but again, we can look into that and get back to you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wesa. Mr. Zishi and then Mr. Banks.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to the question Mr. Akbar observed, and I think almost everyone in this room probably knows that the reason that TNCs don't get calibrated is because they spend a lot of money on lobbying to make sure they escaped every regulation in the state that they could. That's why they run around free like cowboys and cowgirls, because they spent the money to convince a lot of people in the state legislature that they wanted to be free. That means free of public regulation. So, but I think this is a great starting point for some of our state legislators who might be not want to tackle TNCs as a whole, but the issue of, I mean, everything that's metered in the state, the principle is protect the public. You have the meter certified. That's the reason. If you went and get a pound of meat, it's got to be a pound. If you pump a gallon of gasoline, it's got to be a gallon of gasoline. So I would love to join with other people in the industry and talk to some local legislators about if there's anything, if you're going to start doing anything with TNCs, the first thing you might do is take the broad principle of weights and measures and say, if these guys are going to serve the public and they're charging on a meter, that meter needs to be certified just like our meters. And I would love to do that join with anybody in our taxi industry to talk to Chris Ward, who used to be chair of this committee and is a fairly powerful Democrat in the state legislature. And I think we'd get an ear. And if we could take a bite, even if we took that bite on regulation, I think it would be a step forward to even the playing field between taxis and TNC. So I offer I'd work with anybody to do that. Thank you.
Lenny, I'm curious if this is perhaps something that could be added we could bring to the MTS board for a potential addition to our legislative agenda.
Certainly, Chair, we'll consult with with Samantha and see if that's something that we can
That'd be
include.
great.
So that might be a way to get MTS on the record on the issue broadly, and then, give our lobbyists an opportunity to start to get in folks' ear about this and give us something to organize around.
Thank you.
For sure. Mr. Shevin.
Mr. Chair, if I can say something to just sort of give a little bit more background about that, since it's a topic of conversation now. So for most weights and measures devices, there's sort of two tiers of certifications they go through. There's what we call the type approval, which is where the model of the device, so, your specific taximeter model goes through either a national or a state approval process. And then that model is considered approved for commercial use, and we call that the type approval. And then there's what San Diego County Weights and Measures does, which is annual certification. And so those are two separate processes. And I just want to make sure that the Taxi Cab Advisory Committee understands that now the transport network systems do go through the type approval process. So I'm not advocating any sort of stance. I just want you to know that you could either approach and say that the transport network systems should be regulated the way you are, or you could approach and say that your soft meters should be regulated the way that they are. Either one of those would be a potential path forward for you.
Just a response to that, I appreciate that, but I think some people in the room will also appreciate that just because you have a GPS-based device, people are updating that all the time. Uber and Lyft drivers aren't driving with the same iOS system that they started with. They're not, that's whatever they had, it's constantly being updated and changed. And that's why you have to have people come back. So if I just said, okay, Uber's got a meter and they're approved, when do they come back and say, is it still good? Because they're constantly changing those devices and upgrading them. But that's why that's the base. That's what technology is all about, right? Sometimes we pay for it, sometimes we don't. But I'm saying that just if a type has a national or state certification and it got it in 2021, doesn't mean that it's still measuring a mile in 2024 because the software is different. And there's no way that the company could say that they're guaranteeing that that software didn't impact their measuring. That's just not the way software works. So I would say, I appreciate your information. I don't think it really impacts, it might impact us, make a more intelligent ask. And I think that would be good. But I'm not aware that the state has updated its certification for Uber or Lyft soft meters for 3 or 4 years. Are you?
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. When we've dealt with the state, we found that Uber and Lyft do not come in annually or in some other regular period and get their software up certified by the state. And my previous point is there's a lot of reasons for that don't have anything to do with the technology. But But still, I thank you for your input, and I still encourage MTS board to figure it out, maybe with weights and measures, how to frame it. But this become part of the legislative agenda would be great.
Mr. Banks?
Want to clarify the soft meter. That means county does not do anything with soft meter, correct?
That's incorrect. So the county does register and annually inspect soft meters, whether they plug in through the OBD port, onboard diagnostic port, or whether they are based on GPS. They still do need to be registered with us, and we still will inspect them annually. Right now, we aren't testing the soft meters because right now we aren't testing the soft meters that are GPS based because we need to create a new measured mile course. We have one tentatively planned, so hopefully we'll have implementation soon. And so we expect certainly this fiscal year, we will be reaching out to the owners of cabs with soft meters and running them through that new measured mile course.
Thank you.
All right. I do just kind of want to make sure that I am understanding what we're advocating for in terms of addition to the legislative agenda. And there's the narrow issue of uniformity across the way TNCs are treated, or excuse me, the way that they have to come and have the same sort of verification processes that the taxi industry does. And there's a broader issue of just the way that they're just treated differently, right? So that we have two standards for what should, or very well could be considered one industry. But obviously y'all aren't treated that way. Do we want to focus on the narrow issue right now? Do we want to address the broader issue? I want to make sure I'm relaying the right thing to the MTS board. Mr. Majid?
Yeah, just to kind of pick up where Peter left off. For us to take the position that TNCs would have to come under the same regulations where they would have to go through this process of paying fees and inspection, I can almost guarantee you that that's not going to happen. But the flip side of that coin is, at the very least, we should be treated the same way, where if we're using the same technology, we should not be in the position to pay all these fees and go through this inspections and so on and so forth. Bringing them under weights and measures, that ain't gonna happen. Not in our lifetimes at least. Thank you.
Well, maybe I'll live longer than you, so I'll see. Okay, I think this is an intelligent question, and I think it would be pretty hard for the state, given how the politics that we have, to say that they're going to have to come to county weights and measures. But they go to the state. We know that. I mean, we've had the experience of, they've been to the state before. Even if they had to go to the state and go through the process at the state would be a step forward. If they had to do that every year annually or something like that. I think you're right. To bring them under the jurisdiction of each individual county would be going after the whole idea of they don't want it, they're independent of that. On the other hand, I do think this is I think your question is good. I think is there something that we could actually achieve? You and I might differ on whether we can achieve even that, but I think the ask is important in terms of the public interest and public regulation. If it happened once a year at the state, that would be a step forward. But I think we should talk to legislators. Maybe we can frame it in terms of what's one thing we could do, and then are there more things we could do? I mean, the whole general thing. But I think taking on the TNC industry and its lobbying in the state of California would be pretty idealistic thing to think if you're going to achieve anything. So I'm looking for something we could achieve. So I'd appreciate any input about, but if we can do something, let's do it. And then if there's 5 more things we want to do somewhere else, let's talk about that. That would be 2 steps.
Not to make this a two-way conversation, I'm completely on board. Whatever you want to pursue, I'll follow your lead. But just to remind you, the commercial registration, how that played out.
Yeah.
This would be the same thing.
Well, maybe this is not the time to bring up the other issues that it takes us a longer time to vet a driver and get them on board. They get on the same day. I mean, and we lose that ability to maintain our drivers because of that back and forth between municipalities and agencies that vet our drivers. So you guys are bringing up issues that a little more complicated, and I think if we're going to vet things out, there's a host of things that we're still not leveling the playing field, and people in government really don't understand the impacts, especially when the airport started telling us, I think you're using the wrong model. I took that personal, but at the same time, that was a directive towards our industry that, we're being picked on, but at the same time, we need to defend ourselves and really push the idea that leveling the playing field hasn't ended. We still have to, like you say, bring up issues that are still not leveled.
Could we do an ad hoc, maybe out of this, could we do anybody who wants to be part of some kind of ad hoc meeting that could flesh this out a little bit for the board? I don't know, but
Yeah.
we're not going to resolve it here, but I think Tony brings up a good point. If we put 7 things on the table, we might think 1 or 2 are attainable or at least pick our battle. I think that would be good.
So what I could ask is that, Lenny, if you don't mind following up with folks to see who's interested in participating in that conversation, and if it's a smaller group, then, it can just be a working group. If it seems like a larger group, then we can talk about, the potential for an ad hoc subcommittee. But don't want to make it more formal than it needs to be in order to, and which would slow it down, right? The ability for you all to kind of coalesce around a few ideas. What I heard Mr. Hueso say is the thing that I heard before I was here in this seat, and the thing that I've heard most consistently since being in this seat, and that's the frustration around the 2 different sets of rules and the uneven playing field. There's already an uneven playing field in terms of the economics, right? They didn't have to make money for a long time, in order, and still were able to make a lot of money because of the way that they were funded by Wall Street. And then there's like literal different rules to the way that they are able to operate on a day-to-day basis, and which puts the taxi industry at a further disadvantage. And so certainly interested in hearing what ideas you all have from a legislative standpoint at the state level that I can bring to the MTS board for leveling the playing field. I'm happy to do that. Lenny, if you don't mind following up with folks, Samantha, that's all right with you. And then we can go from there. This is an information item, an interesting one, but no action required here. We will move to item 6, please.
Through the chair, we will follow up on the committee's request. But I would just, with your permission, I would like to ask Mr. Shepherd just a clarifying question. On the renewal notices, are they sent via email or regular mail?
We send them via paper mail.
Paper mail, very well. Thank you for your presentation, Austin. Moving on to agenda number 6, Chair. This is a lengthy item on proposed ordinance number 11 revisions. We did send the agenda up ahead with the attached red line revisions. However, this is a summary of all of them. And as a background, most of these revisions are focused of what this committee has been talking about in discussing, having to do with TNC partnerships with Taxicab. So I do want to thank many of these members who took the time to communicate with our department, with their suggestions, with their feedback, and that allow us to tailor these revisions to be more equitable for the entire industry. Excuse me. And the first one has to do with what Margot was brought up a couple of items ago. We are amending the ordinance section 1.1 to add the definition of electronically booked trips as a taxi trip booked through a taxicab dispatch service organization or transportation network company online enabled application or internet website that provides an upfront price. An upfront price shall be considered the total cost, including all fees, exclusive of tip that our passenger has agreed to pay at the time of booking. So by adding this definition, we're bringing equity for all taxicab companies that subscribed with a dispatch service and that would like to participate in this program to allow precisely that, an electronically booked trip with that meaning. And also introducing the concept of upfront price, which is vital to this industry. Most of the surveys after surveys prove that from passengers, that one of the most important aspect for them when they consider getting a trip or going with Uber instead of taxi cabs is the fact that they're able to take a look at the upfront price, knowing ahead of time how much you're going to pay for that trip. So with the changes of technology, many of the dispatch services have done their due diligence in terms of developing apps, adopting computerized dispatch systems that do allow for the upfront pricing and for an electronic trip to be booked. The other ordinance definition of low-speed vehicle will currently, the ordinance defines LSV or low-speed vehicle as a motor vehicle other than a motor truck having four wheels on the ground. In the past months, we did receive a permit application for a three-wheeled vehicle that meets all other definitions for an LSV and also meets California Department of Motor Vehicle Safety criteria. Some of the members might recall that. We covered that in the last TAC meeting. These vehicles are known as tuk-tuks. They're electric, but they have three wheels instead of four. So that is why we're proposing redefining an LSV to remove the four-wheeled on the ground requirement to enable this type of vehicle to, or other type of vehicles that might come in the future to be permitted as an LSV. For permit applications, currently our department practices that when a corporation is applying to become a permit holder, staff requires certain operating records of the corporation. The proposed revisions clarifies that this is our requirement for permit applicants if a corporation. If it's a sole proprietor, if it's a partnership, then all they have to do is list that at the application. However, if the applicant is applying as a corporation, then that's the only time where we would need to verify that the applicant is registered as a corporation with the state. As part of enabling these electronic book trips, we're also proposing redefining the ordinance, or revising the ordinance, I should say, for drivers to be able to decline to accept any electronically booked trips. As committee members might remember, some of these trips that would be defined as electronically booked because they are through an upfront price. That upfront price could be lower or higher than the maximum rates. There were concerns that drivers would be penalized if they refused or if they declined those trips. The ordinance does require all drivers or prohibits drivers from declining trips based on other criteria. And I'll get to that here in a little bit. But in order to enable this and give the drivers the certainty that they will not be penalized by MTS if they decline to accept an electronically booked trip for whatever reason. Further, maybe they just don't want to take that trip. Maybe they think that trip is lower than that would make if they decide to stay at that cab stand. If they decline that trip, then they will not be penalized per the ordinance. As I was covering a minute ago, the prohibition of refusing a fare based on trip purpose. So the ordinance currently prohibits drivers from refusing taxi cab fares based on trip length, on method of payment, and based on discriminatory purposes. It also prohibits refusing a trip if the passenger was going to be transporting groceries or intended to go to a medical appointment. The proposed revisions would clarify that refusing a trip based on any trip purpose, including if it's a grocery shopping or to a medical appointment, is prohibited. The proposed revision also clarifies that the prohibition on refusing trips or charging a greater fare based on discriminatory purposes not only applies to drivers and permit holders, but also dispatch services or organizations if they take that into account when dispatching a trip. And for clarity purposes, these provisions have been moved from section 2.4 to section 1.8, as we found that those sections are more appropriate for the content of these sections. Section 110 has to do with reporting and record keeping purposes from the companies. We are removing the removal of stock register recording or the issuance of shares of a taxicab company's corporate stock. So currently, FHBA, our department, requires permit holders to maintain a variety of financial ownership and operating records for a minimum of 6 months, and to make them available to the chief executive officer upon request. The proposed revision would remove the requirement to maintain records relating to stock register if the permit holder is a corporation. We did that because, as a matter of practice, we conduct business with an authorized representative of the corporation, being the chief executive officer, or anybody that's designated from that corporation, a member or a corporate officer that's authorized to conduct business with MTS. We have a few companies that are large enough to be, that are registered as a corporation with large membership, and we have never had an issue conducting business with the designees of those corporations. Therefore, we're removing the requirement to keep in a stock registry. Also, the exception for maximum rates for fare, the exception of maximum rates of fare for electronically booked trips. Again, because of the upfront pricing concept, this would allow dispatch services to be more competitive with TNCs by providing, at their own discretion, an upfront fare for that customer. The fare can be higher and the fare can be lower. Therefore, we're accepting the requirement for the maximum rates of fare for any electronically booked trip. Currently, the ordinance states that a taxi permit may be suspended or revoked if MTS, the chief executive officer, finds that the LSB or taxicab is operated at a rate that's greater than the maximum rates of fare that we covered earlier in one of the items. As we defined earlier, as an electronically booked trip may be higher than the maximum rates of fare, this proposed revision will add an exemption for those type of trips, for taxicab trips that are electronically booked. Section 2.2 covers the disclosure of fares. The ordinance currently requires that, depending on the method taxicabs are booked, how the fares should be posted and disclosed. For clarity purposes, we made some moves on the provisions from between sections 2.4 to 1.2. The proposed revision would require a notice to be posted conspicuously inside the taxicab that states that, quote unquote, maximum rates do not apply for trips electronically booked. Again, to be conspicuously placed wherever the rates are posted inside a cab. The reason for that is that if a passenger books a trip through an electronically booked trip through an upfront price, let's say, for instance, $40, instead of what otherwise would have been $30 through the meter, then the passenger will have proper notice that the maximum rate of fare does not apply to the way the passenger booked that trip. In this case, electronically booked. The proposed revisions will also ensure that any taxicab trips that are requested through a walk-up or through a street hail or through a phone call through a dispatch service are subject to a maximum rate of fare. So again, walk-ups, the airport taxicab stands, or a telephone call to a dispatch service requesting a trip, those type of trips are subject to the maximum rate of fare. It's a consumer protection. That way, the person is not, the service is not refused based on the fact that the person is already present in front of the driver. If a trip is electronically booked, that passenger always has the option to shop around for a better fare, something that a passenger would like to get in a cab on a street hail, or a disabled person that is booking a trip through the telephone, an option they might not have. So we're ensuring consumer protection by these revisions. Additionally, the proposed revisions will also prohibit a dispatch service organization, a permit holder, or a driver to demand the passenger that is requesting a taxi cab trip to a walk-up, street hail, or phone call to be dispatched to a dispatch service to instead have the taxi cab trip be electronically booked. This is something that this committee brought up to our attention. That way, if a passenger shows up to a taxi cab stand, the driver must provide service there instead of requesting the passenger to book the trip electronically in order to get a higher fare. Minor revisions to the soft meter certificate of approval. Margot, section 2.2 covers the difference between hard meter and soft meters. And the change to this section will currently requires that soft meters and hard meters to be certified by California Department of Foods and Agriculture Divisions of Measurement Standards. Mr. Shepard and Mr. Garcia did confirm that County of San Diego Weights and Measures will accept a certification provided by the National Conference of Weights and Measures for soft meters. So this proposed revision only adds the National Conference of Weights and Measures as a certifying organization for soft meters. And finally, the revisions for the dispatch services, that was a matter of its own workshop. I also would like to thank most of the members that participated with their feedback. We did a back and forward as far as finding a practical solution with being considerate of consumer protections and driver concerns. So currently, Ordinance 11 requires that dispatch services are able to receive and respond to service requirements or other operational questions 24 hours a day, to utilize to be computerized, and to be able to locate vehicles in service utilizing a GPS or similar technology. To facilitate compliance for each of these requirements, the following revisions clarify the operation and technology elements for the 24-hour, the electronic dispatch, and GPS tracking. So first, we'll cover the requirements for 24-hour operations. Currently, Ordinance 11 requires a dispatch service organization to receive and respond to service requests or other operational questions 24 hours a day. The proposed revision allows dispatch services to meet this requirement either through a live person answering phone calls, the traditional way that's been in practice for many, many decades. Either that or automated voice recognition technology that allows the passenger the option to connect to a live person at some point, or by forwarding trip requests to a dispatch service organization that provides 24-hour operations. That way, any of our current dispatch services can meet this requirement and be compliant with the 24 operations, either by traditional methods or by leveraging technology, or by partnering up with a dispatch service that does have that 24-hour operation capability. As far as computerized dispatch, the ordinance didn't define what a computerized dispatch system should be. That cost, as you remember, many of those who participated in that working group, that caused some of the dispatch services to utilize WhatsApp, the messaging application from Android and iPhones, or any other phone messaging apps as a primary method to dispatch trip requests to their subscribers. The proposed revision would require a dispatch service organization to utilize a transportation or fleet management specialized computerized system designed to automate the flow of information between a dispatch service organization and a driver. And at a minimum, electronically record trip information such as start or end locations, route taken, and upfront price if electronically booked. The dispatch service may also calculate a final fare through that trip data for record purposes. Our department has found that this type of technology is, it's ubiquitous, it's prevalent, it's not cost prohibitive anymore. And that provides a better flow of information for the driver, for the dispatch service organization, and for our department in order to adjudicate complaints and gather trip data for other purposes that this committee might found valuable. And finally, the GPS location. Currently, the ordinance does not explicitly explain the method a dispatch service should use to locate vehicles in service using a GPS or similar technology. The proposed revision would require a dispatch service organization to have the ability to provide in real time the GPS location of every taxi cab while the taxi cab is in service. And have them to provide the GPS tracking method through a computerized dispatch software or other similar technologies. So with all these products that are out there, the computerized dispatch service also has that GPS feature. However, that's not the only way that a dispatch service may comply with this requirement. They can also do a separate standalone technology method to track these vehicles while they're in service. All other revisions to the ordinance are very minor and non-substantive. And with that, Chair, this ends this agenda item, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you for the presentation there, Lenny. Do we have public comment on this item?
We do have a public comment. Cameron Hamidi? I guess we don't have a public comment then.
All right, thank you. Committee members, we'll begin with Mr. Banks and we'll go to Mr. Vici.
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the three wheels. Are they going to be driving on Harbor Drive? Because if the driver take a customer from the airport going somewhere, this 25 miles per hour, it would be inconvenient in the Harbor Drive. So I did still go to approve it, three wheels taxi.
Yes, Alfred, if your concern is that using that scenario from the airport, that would be up to the airport to decide if they would permit that type of vehicle. Our ordinance covers, what's authorized in the cities under MTS area of jurisdiction, same as an LSV. So with the airport, that would be up to the airport to accept them. As far as any other concerns, those vehicles are registered with the California Department of Motor Vehicles. So again,
So can airport discuss that with the county who approving the three wheels? Because that's very concerned because that Harbor Drive is very busy with Uber and Lyft. But that 25 miles per hour would be very inconvenience for that Harbor Drive. So airport can.
that would be something, again, if the Airport Ground Transportation Department decides, to my knowledge, there are no LSVs right now that operate out of the airport. Maybe because of that concern of yours, maybe because they just have not found the need for them to operate. Most of them operate in the urban area, downtown areas. But again, that would, if this type of vehicle, if they do become permitted and decide to operate out of the airport, that would be something that the Airport Ground Transportation Department can decide.
Thank you.
For sure.
Mr. Zichi? And this, all right, Ms. Tangway?
There we go. The harbor cops banned anything going less than the speed limit is what the problem is. It's not just the airport itself, it's the harbor police and the San Diego police. But when I was over tons of miles and hours at the airport, the issue was anything going lower than the speed limit would obstruct traffic, and it was banned. That's why even bicycles were banned, and any of the original units like that. So this is a discussion that needs to happen. Since we have bike lanes, they might do something about a right-sided lane, but it's questionable. And the driving has gotten rougher, so it needs to be discussed.
Yes, Margot, thank you. There is no concern, to my knowledge, with the Port of San Diego in terms of the LSVs that operate there. You are correct. I do know that when they came up with those restrictions, they mostly had to do with bicycles and other forms of micromobility such as scooters. That was one of the problems that they had. To my knowledge, we do not have an issue with, or they have not had an issue with any of the MTS permitted vehicles, to include our current LSVs that operate both in downtown and in port area. So I don't anticipate a concern. However, there is, we'll be certainly ready to address it.
Mr. Weiss?
Thank you, Chair. I think we should still be concerned that even though we're making changes to revise Ordinance 11, that this is something that continues to be very fluid in the sense that we need to consider that other factors are still at play in regards to leveling the playing field, in regards to taxi cabs and other organizations that utilize call centers. We are, with the technology that's coming out right now and artificial intelligence, maybe there's going to be an opportunity there for our industry to address that. But I think that's still being, it's still very fluid, still ongoing. I think it's also a topic that it's going to be continued with respect to what is a fair process for us versus them, so we can continue to compete in the marketplace that's all diced and cut up. And what I mean by that is there's still some of us that don't have even though you did mention that it's not cost prohibitive, it is with labor costs, especially if you don't have the technology to implement it yet. I see that you have provided an opportunity to utilize other services, to do partnerships, but we have to start creating that to see if it works for both entities or not. So I still think that we're not finished with Ordinance 11 in that sense, that this is not a complete package for me. And this is also an element of this conversation we had prior on other topics that continues that conversation of level playing field. You know, what are others doing that the state is not imposing that we are being required to have and they are not? So I still think there's, you know, the conversation is going to continue, at least with me it is. And I think that raises other things amongst us that we started conversing already. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So this is an action item. Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation from staff here?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Majid. We got a motion there.
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Zichi. Any other requests to speak or ask questions on this item? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve staff's recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move to item number 7, please.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item number 7 covers a flat rate study for airport originated trips. So for the last year, our department has received several requests from permit holders to establish a flat rate for all airport originated trips. Some of the reasons provided by our permit holders to establish a flat rate include increased waiting times for fares, passenger destination within 1 mile of the airport, and other terms short trips, and having to return to the beginning of the virtual queue, in other words, to the back of the line for another trip. So what we did, we embarked on a survey study with many airports that included Phoenix, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Ontario, Dallas, San Francisco, and Miami, to mention a few, to find out what type of, and understand this concept better. These airports have similar methodologies to establish airport flat rates. So we want to understand this concept better and to have information to initiate discussions with Taxicab stakeholders on developing a flat rate for the airport originated trips. I would like to thank Mr. Anderson and the airport, because they're going to be a valuable partner on this. After all, there will be airport originated trips. And that being said, we will we'll convene a working group just specifically to cover this topic, and to share information on what other airports are doing for taxi cab flat rates in terms of how much are they charging, how was that flat rate developed, if it's per zone, if it's during the time of the day, if it's for mileage distance. So we gather all that data. How far is the airport from the main location or the main source of trips, which most of the time is downtown. That way we can provide the working group with information on unique factors to consider on the development of a possible airport originated trip. During that work meeting, we'll come up with many ideas. One of them could be to enhance driver feedback and participation. Also establish a survey that we can send out to all the drivers with certain questions that we can devise at the working group to acquire feedback and gather at some future point and discuss that feedback. Again, establishing the methodology and ultimately the rate, the ideal flat rate that we would like to implement. The working group will be like other working groups by invitation only. That way we're not in violation of the Brown Act. But I want to mention that all the working groups that we've convened, either for dispatch services issues, that was the last one we did, for insurance, we've had a lot of participation and all of them have rendered very good results. So we will be reaching out to members of this committee or whoever's interested in participating, let us know. That way we can share the information and kickstart this flat rate project for the airport. That concludes agenda item number 7.
All right, thank you, Lenny. Any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments on this item, Mr. Wisa?
I have a question that I think should be included in this conversation because I understand the dynamics of this is driven by drivers that feel that maybe they should charge a little more to customers that go for a short trip. If that's the conversation, to provide them a little more opportunity economically speaking, I think we should have that conversation too, if that trip is further too, because other cities utilize these measures, is to, if the trip is further also, we should also have that conversation of discounting the trip. Because that way people that are paying for a short trip that pay a little more, they don't feel like they're being penalized. The economics are there for the drivers, and there's also some give back to our consumers that take our services.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, in other words, also to incentivize those long trips. So in this study, we did gather many good ideas, innovative ideas that some other airports are utilizing in line of what you're mentioning. So that's what we'll include there too in those conversations.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? All right. We'll say the taxis remain the most underrated transportation from the airport. I took one yesterday, skipped. There's no line. Didn't have to wait. It's not on folks' mind, unfortunately. So anything we can do to let people know that there is a very convenient and efficient way to get from the airport to their homes. Definitely interested in seeing how we can do that. And if a flat rate helps even more, that would be great. Last point on that. I remind my friends that option's there, and it's like they have completely forgotten that taxis are an option. And then I tell them, yeah, you just walk right up, you get one, you go. And when they do it, they're always like, man, that was so easy. But it just, they've just completely forgotten that that's an option at this point. So thank you for the work on this, Lenny. Looking forward to seeing where we go from here. Let's move to item number 8, please.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda number 8 for hire vehicle operations update. We present this update quarterly to the committee. We emphasize that our primary method of communication for all purposes is email. So we recommend all our permit holders continuously through email or new applicants at the time of application to check their spam and junk folders and set their emails in their email filters to accept MTS's emails, either from our department or from our account receivables, or accounts payable, when we send the invoices out. That's why it's very important for every permit holder to notify us of any changes in their address, phone number, or email information. We compile that information through the annual statements, which is a requirement for a permit renewal. However, a permit holder does not have to wait to the permit renewal period. They can always reach out to us and let us know on any changes on their contact information. That way we can update our databases. Also very important, our staff is available by appointment only. All calls and emails are returned by the next business day. We do our best. If it's an urgent matter, we do our best to accommodate the permit holders. But given that now our permit holder numbers are increasing, and I'll get into that a little bit, it's become a little bit more difficult for our staff to be able to accommodate everyone. So if a permit holder has any business to handle that requires an appointment with us, they can do it by emailing or calling us. And a reminder too that many of their business needs can be handled electronically through email or through a phone call. Between January 2nd and March 4th, we're we'll still have a couple of weeks, but we're in between our permit renewal period, in which we're collecting regulatory fee payments, the vehicle inspection forms, and annual statements at the airport holding lot, at San Isidro, Otay Mesa, and CVX. I would like to thank Mr. Anderson and the airport staff for assisting us with. The drivers are very happy. This is very convenient. It's a one-stop shop for them. They can provide us with the payment. We'll do the required cursory vehicle inspection and collect all the required forms, and then they can go back to business. So this has been an arrangement that has been working very well for us in the last 2 years. It's going very well with us too, to the point where, well, I'm going to cover that here in a little bit, where we're collecting the majority of the payments, over 50% of them as of last week. For the payments in the vehicle, another option is for permit holders to drop in their payment, their vehicle inspection forms, and annual statements at a red mailbox that we have in our lobby located at 116th Street in San Diego. And we do collect many of these payments and forms. Again, it's convenient. They drop them there. Karina here collects them the next day, and we update the databases and we send them a receipt. It's been working great for everybody as a very convenient method. The deadline for payment is March 4th. We do have an extended period to the end of the month, but to avoid that late fee of $100, all payments have to be submitted by March 4th, which is a Monday, by the close of business day. Aside of that, we continue to send email blasts. Our staff contacts permit holders through phone to remind them. That way they can submit their payments and not having to be subject to a late renewal fee. No cash or credit cards are accepted, but we do accept personal or cashier's checks or money orders. As of yesterday, we have collected about 50% of our annual regulatory fees. This is typical. However, it is important for all permit holders not to wait to the end of the deadline, because that brings a lot of administrative burden to collect the payments. And we also implemented a dispatch service change fee waiver that was authorized by our CEO. And this is to allow permit holders to change dispatch services if they wish, in light of some of the ordinance revisions that we spoke about earlier. However, those permit holders that are changing dispatch services, they would still have to submit a dispatch service form to us. The payment will be waived until the end of the fiscal year. And this is the update of the numbers. We have seen an increase on taxi cabs. That's very, very good news. We see an increase of drivers, formerly TNC drivers, who want to start their own business and are coming to us to get their cabs permitted. So not only that, but also non-emergency medical vehicles, we also have seen an increase in their application, bringing us up to over 1,560 vehicles, which is the highest number of vehicles that our department has permitted. There is still a 10% of all those vehicles that are surrendered, meaning that the drivers are either out of the country or for any other reason, they're not operating their vehicle. They can still maintain their permit active by paying the regulatory fee. However, in case of taxi cabs, 14% of the fleet are not operating, again, for those various reasons. Whenever they do decide to come back and to work, all that we require is for the permit holder to provide us with a valid form of insurance, of current insurance, and a vehicle inspection, which is pretty quick and can be arranged, and they can be on the road in 24 hours, so long as they make an appointment with us and provide that insurance form. This table covers our contacts. Now we will reflect on additional cities. You can see Oceanside, which came on board as the last couple of months. There are many vehicles out there, mostly non-emergency vehicles, that our inspectors are discovering and that they're inviting to come under compliance. So that is why we have increased numbers going around in this quarter. This table covers the type of vehicle, taxi cabs and NEMs. The reasons behind the warnings that we issue, again, our inspectors, our intent for enforcement, it's always educational. It's always to focus on public safety, and on very extreme circumstances, we'll issue a citation. But we found that the warnings are a good method to bring some of these drivers into compliance. This is a comparison of the complaints during the previous period. The only bar that we like to see go up is the complement. So as you can see, unfortunately, our department keeps getting complaints on rude behavior by the drivers, a lot of times associated by short trips, again, from the airport. Also unsafe driving. Always a reminder to the drivers to follow the California Vehicle Code, not to utilize their phones while they're driving, also to drive under the speed limit, and also in some cases to drive reasonably within the speed limit. We have some complaints of drivers just driving dangerously slow. Some of the complaints also cover overcharges, again, associated with short trips in the airport. So we believe that a flat rate might bring a flat rate, or the establishment of a flat rate might bring these type of complaints down. In this slide covers the entire ground transportation trips from the airport for last year between TNCs and taxi cabs. And the trend continues. TNCs have taken over a large sector of the transportation market out of the airport. And that covers the administrative update, Chair. Any questions?
Thank you, Lenny.
Sure.
Any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
All right, any questions or comments from the committee on this? Ms. Hangway?
Can we have a copy of your discussion that's on the board? Because what we have up there is not what we have in the packet. Yeah. Appreciate it. While we're at it, before we go into, okay, let's finish this one up. I do have a comment, but let's finish this up, and then I have one when we're talking about the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that the PowerPoint is uploaded after the meeting to our website, where the agenda is also.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for your work. So very nice. And partnering with you on these projects.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we will move to our next item, topics for next Taxi Cab Advisory Committee meeting. Lenny?
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item number 9, topics for the next Taxi Cab Advisory Committee meeting. We're requesting feedback to the committee on what topics should be addressed at the next Taxi Cab Advisory Committee meeting on, sorry, I forgot the date there, but it's March 1st or May.
May 21st?
May 22nd.
May 22nd, Mr. Biden, apologies. At this time, staff recommends the following agenda items. We will cover the flat rate fare for airport originated trips, any developments on that, and our quarterly for hire vehicle administration update. Feedback on any additional items that this committee would like to cover is requested. You can always email me directly, and we will contemplate if we can discuss them at the next agenda.
Mr. Zichi and then Mr. Wesa.
Yeah, I would suggest on the agenda, we get a report back on the ad hoc group that's going to deal with TNC. Yeah, I would recommend that we add to that agenda feedback from this ad hoc group that's going to talk about legislative agenda items for the MTS related to TNC regulation.
Mr. Wesa and then Mr. Anderson.
I think we had a presentation that stood out today with the San Isidro problem in the border. That's been a continuous problem in our industry for many, many years. Ever since I started in the industry, it's been plaguing our industry. So, and it's not an easy thing to tackle. It's like the homeless problem issue. It's just enforcement is the problem. But we should have a conversation, a dialogue, get started to at least make it worth the while to people that came to present that side of the industry, that we should address that. At least start having a conversation. And I think we had 3 topics that I guess were touched on the same topic, which was rates of fare. Our rates of fare, the way we measure it, the way we do it annually, come up with a calculation. And it was a difficult topic that we had before, and we dropped the subject. But I think that that's coming back in the sense that we should start having a conversation of, do we want to continue that methodology, or do we want to have a little more conversation on how to come up with a scheme that we can charge rates of fare, whether it's zones or it's something that was used in the past that's no longer used, which is ride sharing. I mean, there's a lot of other things we can have a conversation to include that topic of rates of fare.
Very well, taking notes here, and any other items that the committee would like to bring up in the future, again, you can email me directly
Thank you, Lenny.
and we'll consider. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of tail off of that. What I was thinking as well is on the airport flat rate, it may make sense to look at other locations, maybe the border to the city. Or, I mean, as one type of conversation, you said zones, but seems to be all related to, potentially probably maybe even adding a value like, oh, I can do this every day that I travel. I know what my rate is. That's sometimes a benefit when people buy. They like to know what they're going to get and how much it's going to cost.
Yes, that's a great idea, Mike, and Tony will take that into account. I do want to mention that in order to make data-driven decisions, it would be great to have data. And that is something that I've always covered in this committee, that at this point, based on the technology, we just have no data whatsoever to go off by. So that's going to make this a little bit challenging with the computerized dispatch requirements that were implemented, that we're revising. That should allow trip information be recorded by the dispatch services and to be utilized precisely for these type of purposes. Where are those trips taken to or from um, uh, most often? What is the distance? What's the consumer preference? What's the originating point? So having those trip data information will greatly enhance our ability to come up with a reasonable and practical flat rate, either for the airport or for city trips or any other methods that we discover along the way. But data is vital for these type of plans.
I don't want to turn it into a full discussion on that item. We're teetering on that as it is. If we can let folks know what they might be able to do between now and a future meeting in terms of collecting data, that might give us a starting point for these conversations. You don't need to have an answer off the top of your head, but just something for folks to think about, that might be helpful.
Yes, Chair. One way, the first thing that comes to mind is for subscribers to provide their dispatch services with a copy of their trip sheets. That's a little bit archaic. It would require a little bit more time of going through an actual handwritten sheet, but that's a starting point. We would like to find out where, the average distance. The last time San Diego had a notion of the average taxi trip length was in 1998 through a Sandex study, and that came up to be a 6-mile trip. Now with micromobility and technology and other and TNCs, that has drastically changed. So that being said, if the subscribers, if dispatch services can rely on some of your subscribers and request them to email you their trip sheets. If not, then, I mean, they do have to keep those trip sheets for themselves and have them ready for inspections for MTS. But if not, then some type of communication between your subscribers and your dispatch service in terms of, where do they, what's the most common destination? Where do they operate from, to and from? What is the average trip length? What is the average fare? That way, at some point, if we're able to compile that information from individually from dispatch services, we can come up with a model and have an average or data to start our discussions. So that would be great, a great way to start.
Okay. I think Mr. Banks had a comment, and we'll go to Mr. Abraham, Mr. Majid. I want to be careful that we don't talk about this too much since it wasn't noticed on the agenda. So just putting that out there, that we're borderline having a non-agendized item discussion as it is. Mr. Abraham?
Yeah, this ordinance was done when there was no competition. Now, what we are talking here and what the other fare on the street is different. It doesn't matter what we do here. The outside is the one dictating the market. I work on both, Uber and taxi. If you think there is no 2 or 3 calls a day, where Uber was flooding with 1/3 of the price we pay. So what happened is, even though we try to do anything here, but on the street it's different. So the government have to do, or we have to do something for the industry to survive by giving some extra accounts, whatever. But it doesn't matter how much we did since this happened. We lost everything we worked hard for. Now there is nothing to the driver. Go to the airport, 2 calls a day on the street. Some of them it doesn't. Look at the people that was here at the border. The same thing. We have other unregulated flooding the market, and we can do nothing.
Yeah.
We just came here, waste our time to the truth, nothing. Because MTS or the city have nothing to do. From all these 30 years experience, just MTS, they regulate, we grow, the drivers will make money, the investors will make money and grow. Now it's diminishing the ground. So if there is anything we can do is what can we do to help the drivers on the street?
Understood. Mr. Majid?
No, I was just gonna make Lenny's life a little bit easier. If you gave me a list of questions, what specific data you're looking for, in a bullet point form, I'll be happy to provide all that information, all that data.
Thank you. I'll work on that and I'll forward it to all the dispatch services.
Thank you, Lenny.
Lenny, the 1998 study that was done, was that through the airport? I think
It was through Sandag.
through Sandig, okay.
Mr. Banks, then Mr. Hodoyan.
Yeah, I have two issue regarding the flat rate. I'm just gonna be sure. If we're gonna be having a flat rate, we have to change the meter to that, but so many driver, they will take advantage of that, use it in the city anywhere. So they have that in the airport before, airport rate and the city rate, but these people, they just use the airport rate anywhere. So instead of going through that again, I think we leave that alone. We just, instead of changing it, going on flat rate. That's all I have about that. So let me go to the border. We have the issue at the airport, the people with out-of-state plate, they pick people up from the airport rental car. The airport rental car is only for airport driver with a airport permit. And yeah, so what I do, when that issue come, I ask ATO to be going there all the time. They give them ticket, that's when they stop. This driver, they go into the counter on the rental car, tell them to take their car, it's not a taxi, but it's just like an Uber or Lyft. They keep on taking only two drivers at the rental car center, two drivers at a time. But these people will go in there, bring them from the counter to their car. Then those drivers, they wait, they can't get a customer because they have been having different out-of-state plate to get them up. So that's when the ATO start giving them a ticket, then that stopped. That was an airport. And I think if MTS going to the border, going to CBX, and they can stop it. If not, the San Diego taxi driver, they will not be making money because there will be other people just, free for us. So I think MTS need to do something just go there with a uniform. They can go, but if they do it several times, they will stop. Because if they see the MTS there, they walk away and come back. But if we spend more time doing it, I think it will solve the problem. Otherwise, they will continue doing it as a habit. That's what I see on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Mr. Hodoyan?
Yes, thank you, sir. I was wondering if we're gonna have flat meters for everything, then what's the point of, if we're gonna have like flat rates for everything, what's the point of having a meter? I mean, we had a whole conversation about meter inspections, and then what's the point of having a meter? If we're gonna do flat rates?
So I think this is part of the conversation, when we have this as a full, proper discussion as an item.
Yeah.
I think part of it would be what potential flat rates could look like, and then the pros and cons of that, right? And so that's for the body to have a deeper conversation about. This really is a kind of a starting point to inform what we bring back as a more robust presentation and conversation for everyone here. All right, so we'll now move to committee member communications and any other business. Any committee members who'd like to provide a brief comment on anything taxi cab related that wasn't on today's agenda? Ms. Tangway?
Couple of things. We have gone from the taxi industry being known to run, quote, I don't want to say the word because it's not nice, but illegals. There's some nastier words than that. And we had holding lots down at the border for cabs that had been busted for running the WET backs. It was that serious. So now that's been cleaned up, and now we're getting threats against the cabs, and this has to stop. I don't want to endanger our guys, and I don't want to endanger the San Diego police, but this needs some very serious work. And maybe we can talk to some of our federal guys to see if maybe there's some help. We know the border is an issue because I've been home, I'm listening to what's going on, and the fights over the border issues are phenomenal. but this has to stop because it's part of what the issue is of the open border right now. And we need transportation, we need the safety for our drivers, and we need the safety for the people. Now, on top of that, this is February, which is Heart Month. If you read the NEMs, they require CPR and first aid. I used to instruct this stuff for the Heart Association as a Red Cross gal also. And it might be something you might want to look at for somewhere. Take a CPR class for your family and for your friends. You never know when you go into an emergency. And first aid, because I've been home and once in a while got a little banged up on top of my broken hip, you need first aid supplies at home and a little bit in the car. So think the health issues there. NEMs require it. When I went in to renew my sheriff's permit, they'd always ask CPR, and I said, no, the cabs don't require that. That's NEM. But I am an instructor, and they'd say, okay, now let's get your license renewed. It's something to think about, and it's very serious because things happen. And there are a couple other issues here, but I think that Lenny's done a phenomenal job. We need to sit down at some point and take a look. This goes back to '88 when the city gave up the cabs to MTDB, and we went through a ton of meetings, and there was a lot of threats and violence over it at that point. And the bus drivers would stand there saying, you can't fight this. We have a major issue here, and there are some questions. Who is responsible for what? And Lenny's done an excellent job here. I'm impressed. I had some other comments, but if we sit down, there's a couple of English notes here. I didn't want to bring it up. I don't want to embarrass, but I did have an English major. There's a couple of things that because we've revised this so many times, a little bit of the content needs to be cleaned up as far as just English technicality, since this is the main language here. And other than that, thank you very much for your service, and it's great seeing you guys. Take care.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I heard a date that the city is offering for people that have the effects of the flooding. I think it was February the 28th or something, if you want to apply, if you were affected.
Yeah, there's some other conditions around you're talking about the small business relief? Is that-
Well, for example, we had a car that was flooded, and I know other people that had issues, but that's business related, or does it include businesses and private citizens?
So what we'll do is, the answer to that is yes. I know it was an or
Okay.
question, but there's a lot of different things going on. And because of the federal declaration that happened on Monday, we're still learning about what it will flow from the president's disaster declaration.
Oh, that's right, federal funding.
Yeah, so, and in other words, it's a kind of shifting landscape in terms of what resources might be available. I don't want to give folks false hope. I've been very, very careful about doing that. And so what I'd like to do instead is make sure that we just relay exactly what we get from the city. Perhaps we can provide that to Lenny, and then that can be distributed out to all the members. The last thing that I want to do right now is give folks who were severely impacted false hope that there is assistance that won't actually come through.
Okay, and there's also a lot of people are getting notices on their insurance that one of the programs is not renewing. So make your plans ahead of time to sign up with the other program, because it seems like the other program's not going to survive, but we'll see. If you got a notice, we've got to move forward to the next program provider.
All right, thank you so much. With that, we will adjourn, but first, before we adjourn, the next TAC meeting is May 22nd, 2024 at 1 p.m. And with that, we will conclude the meeting. Thank you, everyone.